Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is April 4th, 2024. This is our regularly scheduled City of Glenwood Springs City Council meeting. We'll have Ryan Muse take roll.
Mayor Wusso,
Present.
Councillor Schachter,
Present.
Councillor Kaup,
Here.
Councillor Weimer,
Here.
Councillor Zelinski,
Present.
Councillor Godis. We have a quorum.
Do we have any agenda changes or conflicts? I'll take that as a no. Do we have any citizens appearing for items that are not on this evening's agenda? Okay, well, so close that. Any council announcements and/or we added an item called reactions to public comments, which is not applicable here. Moving on, I'll come back to council and look for a motion to approve the consent agenda. Councillor Kaup. Hold on one second. Go ahead.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
A second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So we'll move that forward unanimously. And we will move on to actions and/or presentations. Our first item this evening is a proclamation.
Good evening, Council. Steve Boyd, City Manager. Normally I would not bother to stand up and walk all the way over here, but it's not very often that you get to introduce somebody who has 50 years of service in. Gary's been our fire chief for a long time. He's done a phenomenal job. I've loved working with you, Gary. After this proclamation, hopefully he gets to say a few words. I have a pool on whether or not he's going to cry. We'll see how it goes. But really, our fire department is extremely well run. These guys are highly trained. They work hard. They do a great job. If they didn't, you guys would be hearing about it, believe me. So I think, Gary, you're turning over a department that you should be very proud of. And we owe you a lot of gratitude and a lot of thanks. So with that, Madam Mayor, you want to do a proclamation?
I'm going to read my paper version.
Where is it?
Where did that one go? You read this? No, we'll just read this. Read that. Perfect. Okay. I know, right? A proclamation honoring Fire Chief Gary Tillison. Whereas Fire Chief Gary Tillison started his career as a full-time volunteer firefighter in Granby, Colorado in 1976 and rose the ranks to lead as the department's fire chief for 5 years. And whereas he ultimately served 20 years with the Granby Fire Department, including 2 years overlapping with his start with the Glenwood Springs Fire Department. And whereas Chief Tillison began his tenure in Glenwood Springs in 1992, first as a firefighter EMT, emergency medical technician, and was promoted to fire captain, now called battalion chief, during his first 19 years with the Glenwood Springs Fire Department, and was eventually appointed as the fire chief in May of 2011. And whereas Chief Tillison has been pivotal in ensuring the safety and well-being of our community, including the estimated 16,000 full-time residents and daytime population of over 21,000 in the 72 square mile response area of the Glenwood Springs Rural Fire Protection District. And whereas Chief Tillison has served Glenwood Springs and the fire region through thousands of emergency incidents and events, including the South Canyon Fire, Coal Seam Fire, Grand Avenue Bridge Project, Lake Christine Fire, and COVID-19 pandemic, the Grizzly Creek Fire, train crashes, airplane crashes, debris flows, interstate closures, and beyond. And whereas in 2024, the community will celebrate a new emergency operations plan through the astute wisdom and guidance. And whereas Chief Tillison has tirelessly cultivated a strong fire department team and fostered a safe, supportive, and professional work environment. And whereas Chief Tillison has honorably performed his duties with unwavering dedication, professionalism, and excellence for 50 years, including 32 with the City of Glenwood Springs. And whereas the loyal service of Chief Tillison has positioned Glenwood Springs for a resilient future and made significant positive impacts on the community through his exceptional leadership and guidance of our city. Therefore, be it resolved, I, Ingrid Wusso, Mayor of Glenwood Springs and the state of Colorado, do hereby recognize and express our sincere appreciation to Fire Chief Gary Tillison for his longstanding commitment to serving our community, and witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, to be affixed this 4th day of April, 2024. Thank you.
First I want to tell you about the history, right? In 1974, I think we might have covered a lot of that. I am so grateful to this council, past councils, past city managers, current city manager, even the attorney, for the support that they have given me all of these years and the support of our department. So I'm eternally grateful for that. I would add that I am really grateful that by virtue of all of that, I've had the opportunity to work with an amazing city staff and an outstanding group of men and women that make up the fire department. So thank you all very much.
I think it goes down, doesn't it? Yeah, you get it.
I'm gonna try, Sumner. I'm gonna try. Thank you. Hey, I'm not. No. I had a little trouble buttoning this tonight. Thank you for the offer. Thanks. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Oh, yeah.
We'll go ahead and let me move this around. We'll go ahead and have Ben Ludlow with RAFTA come on up and give us a 27th Street underpass update.
We'll try something. Okay, good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. My name is Ben Ludlow, Program Manager for the Roaring Fork Transportation Authority, here to give you an update on the 27th Street Underpasses project. Currently, the project is on budget
and slightly ahead of schedule for completion in mid-October of this year. We are currently 60% complete on this project, and on my recent trip to Washington DC, I gave our representatives and the DOT and our electeds an update on the progress in this project. They were all highly interested to know what we were doing and how we were doing. On to the next slide here. Here are some recent photos of the east side of the Highway 82 tunnel and the BRT station, along with the renderings of what it's supposed to look like. So we're getting pretty close on that side to having it complete. This slide shows you some recent photos of the progress on the southwest corner of Highway 82 and 27th Street, along with the rendering showing the final product. You can see in this photo the 27th Street underpass being complete. Sorry, the Highway 82 underpass being complete and the 27th Street underpass construction underway. Here is a recent photo of the progress on the northwest side of 82 and 27th, kind of behind our RAFTA building there, the old CME building. And this is the beginning of the phase 3 work that we're doing. That's the Rio Grande Trail line that we're starting excavation for in that photo. Here's a cool photo that my project manager, Phil, took the other day during a concrete pour. Actually, it was just yesterday, I believe. And this is the upcoming milestone schedule. As you can see in here, we have phase 3 traffic shift occurring in mid-June. Mid-July, we should have the Highway 82 traffic signals back in place. Early September, the 27th Street will be back in its original alignment. Mid-October is where we're at right now on the schedule for project substantial completion. And we're going to have a grand opening celebration at some point in October with a bunch of interest from our elected officials in DC and from the DOT and potentially attending. So this could be a big old shindig for us.
Yeah.
I would enjoy that. Again, I share this every time. If you haven't already connected with us, please sign up for alerts at 27thstreetproject.com for the latest updates. And I'd like to give, as I do each time, a thank you to the City of Glenwood Springs Engineering, Electric, CBM, Public Works, Police, for the continued outstanding support on this project. I also want to thank CDOT, the Roaring Fork School District, neighbors, and the traveling public for your patience during this highly impactful project. And that's all I have for you this evening. Are there any questions for me?
Anybody have questions? Counselor Zelinski.
So, 27th Street is open up to Blake now,
Yes, I forgot to add that in there. We opened that on May 1st.
and that will remain
April
open?
1st.
April 1st, yeah, and that will remain open.
It was not a joke. It's kind of funny. My operations department really liked having it close. The buses get out and they said, is this an April Fool's joke? No, it will remain open. I know there will be impacts from the City of Glenwood Springs Engineering Department, Lake Street project starting May 1st.
Okay,
Ish.
got it.
So, but yes, it will remain.
Awesome. That's great news. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's it for questions. Oh, Counselor Weimer had a question.
Hey, Ben, thank you. Are you aware of, I think it was an email that was forwarded to you guys from Sarah, I think it was.
Yes.
It was a,
Yeah.
can
there.
you respond a little bit to that? It was that he called voicemail. It seemed that voicemail.
Yeah,
the inbox was full.
our
and-
project team followed up with that individual specific to that item.
But can you just kind of talk a little bit in general about why the voicemail was full, if it was full, and if, you know, that he was seemingly having so much trouble trying to get a hold of somebody?
I cannot.
Okay.
I would like to decline from commenting on that because the person who provided that complaint has a personal issue with me, and so it was deemed a
I mean,
personal
who
attack towards
doesn't,
me.
but.
We have checked everything. The email to the project site went through. We checked the voicemail to make sure everything was cleared out on that. We responded to him, provided him all the information that he needed, and then he did sign up for at 27thstreetproject.com
Right.
to get further information.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ben. Thanks for the update. You guys have a great night. We'll bring it back. I think we're gonna look for an update on the South Bridge, up on South Bridge. Oliver.
Hi, everyone. Ashley Dostal here, Assistant City Engineer. I'm in here for Ryan since he's out. This is the Southbridge update. I want to talk about what we've done the past couple weeks since we met with you last. We met with the consultant Jacobs on their changes and things like that, since we've gotten approval from CDOT and FHWA on some of our VE changes and what their scopes kind of look like and how we're going to guide them to coming up with a new contract to move forward with the documents. We did ask them how long it would take them to update the plans to construction set. They gave us an idea of 12 to 15 months that they could produce those and be ready to go out to bid. So that's good news once we have a signed contract. We spoke with FHWA yesterday and headquarters wise from DC and got approval on the optimization of the 5-degree alignment. So that's a big deal. We will now work forward with them to work on the draft grant agreement, which does not have to be signed until we're ready to obligate the funds, which means when we're ready to go to bid. And then also a part of that, they're recommending an advanced construction agreement or document, which means that we can potentially take funds that we used prior to construction towards our match money, like right-of-way acquisition. So that's a big deal as well. Because right now all these funds are being, for the grant, have to go towards construction. So we wanted to make sure that we have some kind of agreement that we can use our match money towards the entire project.
Awesome.
Moving forward, we'll continue working with the consultants. I'm working on getting them exhibits of all the changes and what they need to implement. We're working on the draft agreement and then continuing to coordinate with our stakeholders on the progress as things go forward and how we can make sure that the Jacksons and RAFTA and everybody is up to date on where things are with design changes and making sure everybody's accommodated with those changes. We anticipate getting closer to an actual cost at about 30% once the design engineers are able to get into this and have a better idea. So they're anticipating that to be about late summer when they'll have a good idea of cost. And finally, 6 months today, we started this VE process. And so it's pretty amazing that in 6 months, we've gotten to this point, that we've been able to progress and get this into a project that hopefully the city can actually afford. Any questions?
Yeah. We'll start with Counselor Godus.
So, good job. Thank you. So this is a compliment. It's not going to sound like a compliment, but it is. So basically we're starting all over on the design because we were at 90% design on what we had, but because we were able to save so much money on everything else, are we starting the whole project at a 0% design or just those very specific elements? Because you said something about 30% design.
So we're not completely starting over. Majority of the Highway 82 corridor is not being touched. So that section is being left alone, but they weren't finished with design there either. They had sections that they still had to get completed. We also aren't doing a lot of stuff on Airport Road that we're modifying or changing as well. So, you know, there's just pieces and elements from my design experience. I think it should be quicker because we're not designing a tunnel and you're not changing that and you're just pretty much doing grading and building a road. So.
Oh,
Okay.
Counselor Schechter.
Thank you. So just for record and clarification, the 5%, we no longer are going to proceed with the tunnel, is that correct?
That is correct.
And what about the new bridge structure? Did that get preliminary approval at FHWA as well?
Yes, that did, to change the structure to a girder bridge.
Great.
steel
And
girder bridge.
what about the placement in the river? Does that go along with it?
Yes.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's a total win. So, Counselor Kaup.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. It is great news to hear this. And so just to confirm, FHWA, are they gonna back that up in writing that no, we don't have to redo with the EA?
So really,
And-
so really how it works is, yes, so far we've gotten all that. What's
Okay.
gonna happen is with the grant agreement, the language goes in there on the changes that were from the application. The changes from the application then are backed up with what those changes are via scope, and
Okay.
then that has to be signed by the secretary
Okay,
at that point.
but they've given
They
that
have a
verbal
pretty
approval.
confidence, that's why we've gone through all these steps. That they
Great.
don't have, they have confidence that this is gonna go through, otherwise they wouldn't have approved it.
Okay, so we're, yeah, no
Then-
tunnel, 5-degree different alignment.
We're within the
New
right-of-way
bridge.
plans,
Awesome.
and changed the right-of-way plans, so we can continue to proceed with that acquisition.
Great.
And then with the EA, there is no, that's the whole point, we wanted to make sure everything stayed within the EA, and we have.
Okay,
The only thing is we'll have to do a reevaluation form, but we had to do that going into construction anyway.
okay. So are we, and then we're looking at renewing the contract with Jacobs, is that right? Are we still any talk or feeling about going design build, or is that, we're not there yet?
I think we're going design bid build. Is
Okay,
our plan at this point, because we think that we can meet all the deadlines and the timelines with the grants. and
great.
funding, and so with the plans, we don't have to obligate the funds until September of 2026.
Okay,
And
right,
so
okay.
we're on track.
With the 12 to 15 months, if we can get a contract signed with Jacobs in the next 30 to 45 days, which should be very feasible,
Okay,
then we would be well within even the September of 2025 deadline for one of the other grant funds that we basically have. We have several of them, and some of them have dates.
okay,
So we should be
right.
able to go out to bid by that deadline, which would obligate those funds, which is $1 or $1.5 million, which is nothing to sneeze at.
Okay.
Obviously, we'll take that. And to answer your
Great.
little bit of your question
Fantastic.
you had previously,
Mhm.
we have a lot of these parts and pieces in writing from FHWA.
Okay,
We're allowed to
Okay.
change the bridge, we're allowed to get rid of the tunnel, the 5 degrees is fine, those kinds of things are fine. So it's not all in one document we could hand you. Since they've kind of piecemealed the answers to us, they've
Right.
given us direction formally on what to do with the sound study. So we have
Yes.
all those parts and pieces to kind of back up the decisions we're making. And the person we were talking to at FHWA, I won't mention his name, but he's really high up.
Great.
He's in DC, basically. His
Okay.
office is in DC.
Mhm.
And he was fine with everything we talked about. And our local FHWA people are also agreeative of all these things. So
Well, that's fantastic.
unless it lands
Great-
on the
great
secretary's
job.
desk,
Yep.
it's like, no, which none of them see happening.
Well, and
Very
seeing,
sure
and
about it.
seeing the cost cutting, looking forward to seeing those cost
Yeah.
cuttings. I mean, that's fantastic.
I think
Progress
everybody's
to
been
move
very
forward.
appreciative of taking a project that in theory was not doable
Right.
and moving it into the doable range, and they consider it a project this
Yeah.
point is a huge win.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And the funny part about it is even if we were to VE the existing 90% down, I'm sorry, I took a little bit. If we VE the existing 90% down to something we could afford, it may actually be more work than this. Because then you are redesigning the entire tunnel, you're redesigning the entire bridge, you're redesigning all of these parts and pieces. We've actually shaved some of those off.
Right.
You don't need to redesign anymore. You just gotta do road.
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
super easy.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
time frame wise, we may have actually saved ourselves design money and design time by getting rid of some of these really complicated parts and pieces, because that tunnel was super complicated.
Right,
Mhm.
okay, great. So, a question about the highway interchange, and I know we still have conversations to have with CDOT to get that, but do we have I've received some questions on that, like about frontage roads and things like that. Do we have kind of a current conceptual design that that council can access to see
So it is in the 90% plans.
on, and that's online?
I will
Okay.
double check whether it's not on the website, and I will make sure it's posted.
Okay.
Okay.
60% are up right now. We haven't put the 90.
60%.
And I
Okay.
can put the 90% up, and then from there, all of us in there,
Mhm.
beware, it is 700 pages.
Oh, boy.
Cool.
Okay.
Just so
Well,
you know,
that'll
it is lengthy.
That'll be fun.
Just in case one of our council packets is short one
Yeah.
time, we'll just go ahead and pick that up.
There's a lot there to
Yeah.
go through.
All right.
And when do
Great.
you think
Thanks.
estimates are that we'll see pricing? When does that, like, kind of the timing on that? I don't know if I missed that.
Like
It
some,
would be best for Jacobs to be at like that 30% level.
Mhm.
And when we spoke to them, we were talking about with the the reevaluation
Yep,
forms and stuff.
yep.
And they were saying they could probably be there late summer.
Okay, great. I think I heard that, but
Better
I wanted to
idea
confirm.
of
Yeah,
that Numbers, 'cause
Okay.
I could give you something now and it probably is not
Yeah.
gonna be accurate.
okay,
Okay.
great.
Get further in design and further into storm changes and things like that.
And I know I've been getting, the DOT contact has reached out to me as well. How often are you guys giving him updates and what's appropriate to give updates?
Are we talking about the Mr. Evan?
Uh-huh.
We're updating him as necessary.
Okay.
We're literally in contact with most of the DOT contacts daily.
Okay, awesome.
Daily,
That's
weekly,
great.
FHWA.
Perfect.
He's kind of sits in a different position, so
Kinda
they
figured,
should be
yeah.
updating him, but
Yeah.
maybe we
Yeah.
can do better
Okay,
multi.
thank you. I appreciate
Well,
that.
and we've been told since CDOT is administering the grant for
Mhm.
us, that we are supposed to handle most of our communications through Jason Huddle.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay,
and then he will distribute all communications to his team, so
Okay.
that's how we've been operating.
okay, awesome. Great.
But Bree is basically handling Mr. Evan.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate that. Counselor Curtis.
Hey, where are we at on, did you say, where are we at on the sound wall?
So with that, we are required by FHWA to update it because of time, change code and things like that. So Lee is working on new traffic numbers. He's going to meet with the county next week to make sure they approve what he's predicted. And then we will turn that into Jacobs. We've contracted with them since they did the previous one to move forward and update it. And then we will find out from there whether or not it is still a valid recommendation or not. That is, right now it stays in and that's where we are at. I don't know if anything will change with that.
So the last sound study, that wall made it in by about that many cars.
Mhm.
And that was with the anticipated sunlight,
Mhm.
quadrupling everything.
Which
So-
is why we went to the county and went over all those assumptions that were made by other people. Kind of correlated what's reality and what's not reality and kind of brought those traffic numbers down to a conservative reality.
Yeah.
Which is why the numbers will be reduced slightly, which means that the sound wall may or may not be in there depending on the new sound study. But we're under new regulations with the new sound study, which we would have been anyhow, so it'll be interesting to see.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate all your hard work and that you keep continually coming and giving us updates. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
We'll go ahead and move on to item 14, Habitat Memorandum of Understanding. We'll let Carl Hanlon jump in.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is really some administrative cleanup. You, as council, entered into a memorandum of understanding with Habitat in January of 23 after kind of a lengthy negotiation process over developing potentially two sites within the city of Glenwood Springs on city property. One was the 8th and Midland site. The other one was the one we often refer to as the Iddings parcel. I think it's listed as the South Glenwood parcel in the MOU. Two things kind of need to happen. One thing that came out of digging in and really working through on those two properties was a realization that the Iddings property, mostly due to soils conditions, is just really not buildable for, at least for affordable housing. The costs were just going to be too high there. And so that was kind of taken off the board. We wanted to make sure that we kind of close the loop on that and amend the MOU to eliminate the Iddings parcel from being part of it. The second piece of this is underneath the MOU, once Habitat has received development approvals, which they received from the Planning Commission in June of last year, we were obligated to transfer that parcel for which they got the development approvals over to them. We've included in the packet a deed of transfer, a special warranty deed that Dave Mylar, the attorney for Habitat, as well as myself, have worked on. That transfers that property over at 8th and Midland. It would be the parcel B, if you remember all the discussion we've had around which ones were taken for which purposes. Parcel B, it contains two restrictions. One is that it has to be used for affordable housing. The other one is that construction has to commence within 3 years or it reverts back to the city. The reason for that 3 years is it matches up to the timeline that the development approvals are good for, and we just felt that that was appropriate. There again, we have confirmed that that's comfortable with Habitat. And so with that, I would ask for two motions tonight. One to approve the amendment to the MOU, the other one to approve the deed and transfer of the 8th and Midland parcel. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
You have any questions? Counselor Schechter?
Well, I would make a motion. I don't have any questions at this point.
Let's double check. No questions? Okay, go ahead.
I would approve the first item regarding the amendment of the MOU on the Iddings property that we moved to approve. And I moved to approve.
I'll second that motion. And that is, yeah.
Any discussion on that motion? We have a first to approve by Counselor Schechter, second by Counselor Kaup. Go ahead and call the question.
Yes, Counselor Zelinski. Yes, Mayor Wusso. No, Counselor Gotis. Yes, Counselor Weimer. Yes, Counselor Kaup. Yes, Counselor Schechter. It passes 5-1.
Bring it back to council for either questions on the second item and or a motion. Counselor Kaup.
I will make a motion to approve the special warranty deed as revised to include the 3-year action period concerning the parcel on 8th and Midland with Habitat for Humanity.
And adding the mayor is authorized to execute the deed.
Mayor is authorized to execute the deed.
I'd second the motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Counselor Kaup and a second by Counselor Schechter. Do I have any discussion before I call the question? Okay, we'll go ahead and call the question.
Yes, Counselor Zelinski. Yes, Mayor Wusso. No, Counselor Gotis. Yes, Counselor Weimer. Yes, Counselor Kaup. Yes, Counselor Schechter. It passes 5-1.
Thank you. Thank you, Carl, for all the energies you and your firm put into that to make sure that that property transfers appropriately and for an appropriate amount of time. So, we'll move on to item 15, also Carl Hammond.
You're gonna hear a lot of my voice tonight. This is, as you recall, and just you can look at the staff memos, probably the cleanest short version of this. Excel has been working on the changeover to the 69 kV line going through town. You heard a 1041 permit on that. You ultimately approved that 1041 permit. We knew at that time we need to come back around for you acting in your proprietary capacity, as there are a number of easements and right-of-ways that get crossed throughout town of city property. And so what you have in front of you is a resolution approving a package of easements. The staff has been over this in a lot of detail, and I want to give a lot of credit to Matt and his team, as well as Richard out of my office, for really doing the grinding work on getting through all of that. This came in with an initial offer from Excel in the aggregate for those easements of $110,750. We have been negotiating back and forth and have gotten that number to $250,000, which we are comfortable at. I would also note that much like you, because they're a public utility, they do have the power of condemnation. And I think we're at that point where it starts making sense to them to get it in order of possession if we're going to continue to kind of go back and forth. I do want to thank their legal team for working with us in trying to find what we at least believed was an appropriate amount for that. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and there are several representatives of Excel on that if you have questions for them, we can pull over as panelists. At this point, there again, I view this as almost ministerial. We're just kind of banging away and getting things done. So with that, happy to answer questions.
Any questions? Okay, then I'll go ahead and look for a motion. Counselor Kaup.
Sure, I will, I would like to move that City Council adopt Resolution 2024-17 between the City of Glenwood Springs approving easements, granting Public Service Company of Colorado authority to use city property for the Mitchell Creek transmission line replacement with in consideration of the funds just mentioned by our legal counsel.
And I'll look for a second. Counselor Schechter.
I second the motion.
Any discussion? Okay, we'll call the question.
It passes. It's unanimous.
Okay, perfect. And another thank you to you and your firm. Thank you.
As to the next item, Steve and I actually met with the group this afternoon, and we both predicted 7:30. You guys are significantly ahead.
The whole night, there's.
The whole night has been, and so somebody needs to text Marco and tell
Yeah.
him that the lack
It's
of
him.
being here, apparently everything moves quickly. We
Absolutely.
have emailed and texted to try to get them here. We're gonna ask that you just take maybe a 5-minute break
Okay.
to get them in the room. We
Let's do it.
certainly could take it up without them, but if you have questions, I'd just like to give them that opportunity.
Okay, so we are going to take, I'm actually maybe just gonna say straight up 7 o'clock, about a 9-minute break. And then we'll come back on. Thank you. Okay, we are back in session. We are moving on to item number 16, which is airport lease and concession agreement. Carl Hanlon.
Again, hi, council. What you have before you tonight is the culmination of several months worth of work, multiple work sessions with council discussing the issue, concessionaires agreement for the operation of the airport. What you have in the packet is what we believe to be the final agreement, with one caveat. There are two different sets of sort of stepped schedules, because when we came away from the last work session, we were unclear which one council had in mind. I don't think there was even general consensus on, there was consensus on having an increasing percentage of gross revenues, but the actual mechanism, which one you guys were going to go with, had not, we didn't feel like we had clear direction. So if you are inclined to approve this agreement, I would ask that you also pick one of those two to go along with it. Steve can talk to the kind of the financial aspects of this. I think at this point, we are fairly comfortable on the kind of the boilerplate legal protections for the city, how that, the mechanics of that work. There again, just as a reminder, more for the public than anything in this agreement, it tracks the charter as currently exists, which is that the airport can only be closed with a public vote. If that were to occur, that would terminate this lease agreement with no adverse, the city wouldn't be liable for anything at that point. There again, Steve can talk to the financial piece, but in general, the lease is premised on a percentage of gross revenues that are generated on the airport property, and that steps up from a kind of a 1% in the first few years as some equipment is paid back to the city that they had put on the airport, keeping in mind the airport is a city facility, and then ramping up to 10%. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there's probably going to be a lot of discussion amongst council, but we're here to answer questions. I don't know, Steve, if you want to speak to the financial piece, and then Haley Kramer and Greg Rippey are here on behalf of the entity that would be signing on the other side of this lease. Other piece, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention it, is if you are inclined to approve this, would ask that that approval include an effective date of May 1. That just gives us some time on the staff side to kind of change over accounting to deal with it.
Okay, Steve, do you have anything you want to add?
I don't think I have much. There are a lot of assumptions, obviously, in a financial pro forma. These are the airport community's assumptions. We revenue share based on gross revenue, so most of that is really irrelevant for us, but if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councilor Kaup.
I just had a question, Carl, for you. So the City of Glenwood Springs minimum standards for aeronautical activities, is that Exhibit C then to go along with the?
Yeah, I
believe the so. lease?
Sorry.
Okay. I think, okay, so those will stay in effect.
Yep.
Is my understanding. And then, so it says in there that the city has authority to hire and oversee the airport manager. Will that be, I was thinking that the operations.
Yeah, no, and it will be up to
it-
them to do that. We
Okay.
didn't modify the adopted standards, which were put in place when we were the operators versus
Right.
leasing it out.
Okay.
So from that standpoint, that would be a modification to that. But
So
we
just- yeah.
spent a long time nailing down the total package of the minimum standards. So I don't think either Mr. Rippey nor our office or the staff really wanted to rehash all of the minimum standards again.
Okay,
So
but we're not.
we're not on the hook to
intending
hire that
to-
or intending to oversee. That's going to be part of the concessionaire's responsibilities.
Okay, great.
Okay.
And I think that's all I have right now. Thanks.
Okay, do we have any additional questions? Then I'll look for a motion. Councilor Schechter.
Madam Mayor, regarding the airport lease and concession agreement between the city and KGWS Airport, Inc. I would move for approval with an effective date May 1, and the proposed revenue sharing or schedule, the second one that has the phased in 1, 5, 7.5, and 10% share.
Counselor Zelinski.
I would like to second that motion.
Okay, I'll bring it back to council for discussion. I don't think we're taking public comment on this. Do we need to take public
You
comment?
don't need to take public comment. It's up to you.
Okay, okay. I don't know if anybody's here to speak on it, but you might. Okay, okay. Let's go ahead and bring you up then. Yeah, before we continue on this, we'll go ahead. You've got 3 minutes. Please tell us your name and if you live in city limits.
Sure. My name is Joe Mueller. I live outside of proper city limits, but in the 81601, I'm part of the Airport Advisory Board. And I just wanted to comment to council that the Airport Advisory Board strongly recommends the council adopt this provision here as Sumner has proposed.
Thank you, Joel.
That's all I have to say.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thanks for coming this evening. Back to Counselor Capel.
Oh, so my question was, I had a preference for the first payment or percentage of
10.
gross income going to the city. It's a little more aggressive. So I don't know how the rest of council feels about that, but I don't know that I'm real strong either way, because I wouldn't mind having a provision in there that kind of says that it gets evaluated after 5 or 6 years. But I'm thinking future councils can possibly adjust it if they needed to or wanted to anyway.
I think they could renegotiate those numbers if they wanted to at a future
Right.
date.
Either
The
up
other
or
change,
down.
I would tell you the other change from the is now it's a 20, 10 plus 10 rather than a 30 plus 10. And that just has to do with a charter provision that I don't think actually applies to this lease, but we just wanted to be overly careful in moving it to 20 plus 10 plus 10.
Okay, okay.
But I mean, this would be the agreement the council would be signing off on. So you could always ask to reopen that, but you wouldn't have a right to force it.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So I don't know if there's any a friendly request to go with a more aggressive cost sharing with the city, but I'll leave that up to you guys.
I'm gonna let Counselor Schachter, who made the motion, address Counselor Kalp's request.
I'm not strong enough on either schedule. I would like to hear from other counselors. I'm willing to amend the motion if necessary, depending on feedback, but I think I would say that I'm very favorable to this whole process in terms of what the town has told us in the past, what we've been able to shape on behalf of our airport users and to the benefit of the city. So I'm very pleased regardless of which schedule we end up with.
Okay. Counselor Gotis.
Yeah, I'll get back to Shelley's. I think that's an interesting question. But I'm going to take a slight detour because I think that's secondary to me. You know, both these pro formas are so conservative. It doesn't anticipate any additional revenue from land leases. And there's significant land out there that could be used for land leases. And so, you know, one of my concerns about taking from the gross and not the net in a cost sharing program is if the airport generates an extra 100,000, 200,000, for example, whether we get, Shelley, 10% or 5% of that, it doesn't move the needle a whole lot. But if this group, the nonprofit starts to get that runs the airport, is generating $200,000 a year more, because again, that's not baked into any of this pro forma at all. Then what happens after 5 years and they're sitting on $1 million in their bank account with really no way to spend it, or 10 years and say $1.5 million? I don't know, but you know, I guess one of my questions for legal, Carl, is what happens in the hypothetical where this fund balance just builds? Because if they need a new runway, there's grants out there. There's never been $1 million expenditure out there that I'm aware of anyway, that we've had to pay that can't be done through grants. But what happens if this group 10 years from now has this massive fund balance, and then the citizens go, okay, we're ready to, you know, take a vote to shut it down? What happens to that money with that nonprofit? Does that money get distributed back to that property? Does it stay with the users? How does that?
I can answer how they have that structured inside of their organizational structure. From our standpoint, it wouldn't have any implication for the city at all because we would have taken our 10% off the gross income coming in. So I can't really answer the question, I guess, because I don't know what that structure is, and how they would use that. So it would probably be down to their bylaws and their operating agreement, for their organization. I'm sure you could ask Mr. Rippey that question, but I can't answer it for you because I don't know.
Well,
Wouldn't it be, and tell me, I'm gonna jump into your question. If we looked at it simply as a leasee, leaseor concept, ultimately this nonprofit could go up to, I don't know, Spring Valley, find another piece of land, lease it again, and create a runway and have it up there too. So ultimately, the nonprofit does have the ability to be mobile. But in this agreement, as the leaseor, we are only getting 10% of the gross, whatever, but that's how I would interpret it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that I can't answer the question because I don't, like with any arm's length
Yeah.
transaction, I don't know what a business,
Sure.
for instance, like the fly shop out in the property that we leased to them
Yeah.
next to Alpine Bank. I have no idea what they do with the money that they make beyond our lease payments.
Yeah.
well, I guess that's okay. I guess my, with a 501c3, and I don't know if it's the same with the 501c4, if you disband as a nonprofit, I'm talking about moving on and moving up.
Okay.
But if you disband as a nonprofit, those funds have to be distributed to other nonprofits in the area. And so, I just don't know the legal structure of 501c4 of how that goes. And so, I guess what I would suggest, and I think is, again, this assumes no more money is going to be made than it ever has been. So I'm concerned if there's a significant amount of money that keeps continue to pile in this reserve account that is meant for the airport, which is the city property, then, can we cap it at some amount? Can we say, hey, after $500,000 piles up, everything after $500,000, once that reserve is fully funded plus some, after the $200,000 is paid back to the rest of, to the loan that we already have with them. At a certain point, they're going to have more money than they know what to do with. And then at that point, we do a 50-50 split. Because that way, I think, again, this is a lease where we're leasing out 63 acres and getting anywhere from, on one pro forma, $50,000 a year, 8 years from now, or $38,000 a year. Shall I be more supportive of a year because it's a little more? It's difference like $10,000, $12,000, not a big deal. So I'm more supportive of that. Because in general, I think we're getting a raw deal altogether. But I don't think it's that material between the two. What I think is more material is if there is, and maybe it's just a hypothetical that will never happen, but this is why I want to talk about it now, is if they have a reserve that's fully funded, instead of continuing just to stockpile money, at that point, if the lease changes over to a 50-50 split of the net, then I think the taxpayers, the residents of Glenwood would see a more equitable, because then the circumstances have changed from what was presented to us. We're presented with nothing's ever going to change. So if those circumstances do significantly and materially change, at some point, we'll have a very healthy airport. We'll have a very healthy nonprofit running it, and we'll have now an equal split.
So I hear a friendly amendment. So so I just want to
I don't know if I'm
confirm.
doing a good job explaining it or
Yeah,
not.
so is there any interest in the motion maker and the second in pursuing this, or do you want to stay the course with discussing the two tiers, and do you want to entertain this concept? Counselor Sector.
I'm comfortable. It sounds like, to me, out of respect to Mr. Godis, who knows maybe more about nonprofits, sounds to me like we're changing the circumstances to almost double dip. If we're dealing on a gross basis, we're collecting once on revenues, whether it's from new leases, different land uses, unexpectedly great revenue. That seems to be adequate. Now, if the amendments want to jiggle with Schedule A or B, or the sooner of, without substantially changing the lease term, I'm comfortable with that. But I don't think I'm comfortable enough with what seems to be a significant shift in what we've discussed so
Okay,
far.
thank you. So Counselor Zelinski.
So, yeah, I feel similarly about the changing the terms of the lease. I don't know. You know, I'm just thinking, I walk out there a lot with my dogs and sometimes I cut through to take a shortcut and go up by the school instead of going all the way around the neighborhood. And, you know, I mean, we're in the mountains. There's a lot of shifting. I anticipate that runway is gonna need some pretty significant maintenance. We could ask Greg to come up and talk about that, but, you know, we've seen with the bridge how much construction costs. I don't know that even with a conservative pro forma and then the potential of doing better than that, I just don't know that we are going to be fretting so much about the money. I think we just are trying to give them space to have a good, vibrant operational space. And I'm looking again at these percentages. Like you said, I think it's negligible. The reason I personally was like leaning towards the second one is because it's a predictable escalation. The first one talks about until the general fund is repaid. So if they have a really soft income, it could take a lot longer for that to be repaid. There's the chance that we wouldn't get. At least this is a more predictable, I guess, measurable revenue source. And so that's the only reason I lean towards that one. So I don't know. I think that if we wanted to entertain any more conversation about amending it beyond with this future like boon of revenue, we should encourage a question to at least see.
Okay. Before we ask Greg some questions and see kind of where he's at with it, I'd like to get kind of a general sense. I haven't heard yet from you and I haven't had a chance to speak yet as well.
You need it.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I support the motion in the second.
Okay. So, and that is with
Yeah, with the 4 tiers.
4 tiers.
Yeah,
Okay.
you bet.
And that's actually where I am as well. So I think that there's kind of a general consensus. We have had a chance to hear from everyone. You've still got a question?
just want to respond. Sumner's.
Sure. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so my intent of saying that was not that it would be double dipping. We wouldn't still get a certain percentage after the hypothetical reserve is funded at, and I'm just throwing $500,000 out there, whatever.
You would just go to
50-50 at that point, because at that point in time, we would have an equal partnership share for the citizens, the city, the airport, and they would have a healthy reserve that is in there. I think all of our goals would be accomplished, but, you know, I think that, you know, if they did make, and again, this is all hypothetical, but if they did make a couple $100,000 on these land leases, you know, the actual dollar amount share with the airport being able to take out, in that case, 300,000 and the city getting 38,000 feels unfair. And I'm fine with that up until we have, it's kind of on both ends, right? Because we have the loan that needs to get repaid. So they're taking a little bit of hit until that loan gets repaid. Then the loan gets repaid and they can go off to the races and make money and they can fund a heck of a reserve. And then at that point, then I think it's fair to do a 50-50. So if there's not support of it, then that's fine. But I at that point, at $500,000, I would not anticipate it taking any more, the 3, 5, 8%. That's, I don't want to do that. That's all.
Counselor Schechter.
Well, thank you for clarifying. I get it. I still think, based on prior discussion, I'd stick with the motion with the caveat that if they do that well, to their credit, and in 20 years, if there's that much money rolling in, there's a room for renegotiation at that point, and we'll see what happens. But so I would stick with the motion as stated right now.
Would either of you like to come up to the podium and address anything that's been discussed, or then come on up? Mr. Greg Rippey, just give us your name and if you live in city limits.
Mayor,
Mhm.
213 Creekside, Glenwood Springs.
Yep.
I would like to point out one thing directly to Councilor Godus. Now, we don't have the articles of incorporation and the bylaws filed at this point, but I can tell you what we have in there as a draft. Upon dissolution, and after meeting all obligations, anything left would revert to the city of Glenwood Springs. And that's the way we intend to do it. I hope you are a wonderful seer and all this money's gonna come in as,
Yeah, me
as
too.
you say. But I started on the airport commission in 2004. And you can look back at the budget years. We've never predicted a surplus of more than $20,000 to $30,000. It is not a flush enterprise, so. If it was, you guys would have swept it to someplace else earlier. But I want to point out what it's our intention as we go forward on this, because if for some reason this corporation dissolves, it should go back to the city, because the city is the one that granted us the lease. And hopefully, even in dissolution, the city may want to continue to operate it as an airport, so the assets would revert to the city. And any other questions I hesitate to ask?
I am Counselor Schachter.
Well, I appreciate that, Greg. Thank you. And I don't know if you and Carl have a comment. It seems to me, based on, even though you're very clear, it hasn't been drafted or signed yet, would it be reasonable to amend the motion to at least include that, make sure that the final agreement that they sign includes that reversion clause?
I was just gonna say, what Greg's speaking to is the bylaws that
Right.
handle dissolution, and we will certainly take a look at those before. That's part of the we have a chicken and an egg here, is that this
Right.
corporation doesn't need to
Mhm.
exist unless council approves the lease.
Yeah.
Hence the other reason for a May 1 start date. Certainly Haley's office and mine and Greg will
confirm
coordinate on
that
that and
on
make
there.
sure that that is how
Thank
it's
you.
laid out.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, bringing it back to council, we do have a motion on the table and a second. Looks like you have a last comment?
No question. not comment.
Okay, question.
So I think you may have addressed it, but we're not going to execute a lease with a corporation that doesn't exist. I mean, we're going to make sure that we see bylaws and they're
Right, yeah,
incorporated.
absolutely.
Okay.
Great. I'm gonna call the question.
Yes, Counselor Zelinski. Yes, Mayor Wusso. No, Counselor Godus. Yes, Counselor Weimer. Yes, Counselor Kaup. Yes, Counselor Schachter. It's 5-1. It passes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for your efforts. Yeah, we look forward to the partnership. Take care.
You're not gonna fly?
We're a daylight airport only.
Okay. Thank you. Bringing it back to council comments. We'll go ahead and get those started. Counselor Schachter.
Well, thank you. Once again, I think, I don't want to speak for council, but I expect to do. Once again, congrats to Gary and our whole Department of Public Safety. But I would ask that we get on the agenda an update on the emergency evacuation plan that he has spearheaded. Thank you very much. One thing that may come up later, Hannah's not here, but I did notice the Steamboat Springs controversy, one major project declined, but another one going forward. And I noticed something we had talked about, and I think it ties to 123. They have, and I didn't see the draft, Steve, but they have in their expedited reviews, if the developer has I think their requirement is 20% inclusionary. They have expedited review process if the developer comes with 30%. I'm sure Hannah has many things up her sleeve, but that seems like something we should examine as we're looking at our community housing options. I just noticed that in the news. The other thing would be to get a workshop so we can discuss with staff, with Liz, with Matt, taking a look at the feasibility and options for 2025 spring cleanup resurgence. Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Thank
Madam
you,
Mayor.
Counselor Schachter. Counselor Kaup.
Just a couple of items, and I know Rodney, and I don't see Dan here tonight, but on the from the Parks Department, there is a lot of beetle kill on the north slope above the road that goes up by the water tanks on the way up to the cemetery. So the north slope of the cemetery hill. There's a lot of beetle kill, and a large tree had fallen over that hiking trail and road, and it looks like there are going to be others coming down. So I'm just wondering if there's a plan to kind of mitigate some of that on the hillside.
Talk to some of that with my comment.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And the other piece of that is when the road work was done on Red Mountain, we lost quite a bit of trail parking for the Red Mountain trailhead. And so I'm wondering, and I had asked about that before and was told that it might be at Wolfshone, but I've gotten quite a few comments from frequent users of the Red Mountain trailhead that are just wondering if there's going to be more parking added. And it seems like we have a major mountain bike trail there. It's a main hiking trail. Do we have plans for parking to handle that summer load, or just wondering where that might be? And you don't have to answer tonight. Maybe that can be brought back just as a update at
Yeah.
a future council meeting. Okay, yeah.
Okay.
And
great.
then one more thing, we had a West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition meeting, which Hannah is the city rep on that. I'm the RAFTA rep, and but also kind of wearing the city hat. And they're putting together a deed, kind of a buy down
Right.
deed program similar to what Eagle has, and it's going to be regional. And they will be, just an update that they probably will come to us at some point for an ask. So we might, just put that in your thinking caps. It's regional. It won't be specific to Glenwood, but there are also going to be opportunities to maybe, if our 2C money has a buy down program, you could combine them. If it's someone who lives and works in Glenwood Springs, they could get a substantial down payment to put a deed restriction on their home. So just keep that in mind. Thanks.
Great. Counselor Zelinski.
So I had 2 meetings yesterday, one with the River Commission and one with Parks and Rec Commission. And of kind of community interest, it looks like the 3 Mile Creek Confluence Restoration Project is proceeding. They're making gains. A couple of little hiccups with just like materials and such, but that seems to be going. Oh, thanks. Okay. And then the other one that I wanted to kind of highlight was with Parks and Rec, and that's Linwood Cemetery. And so I think that's what you're speaking to. Roaring Fork Outdoor Volunteers has chosen that as one of their projects for the summer. And so they will be up there. I don't remember when it is, but that will be ongoing. And one of the things that they're planning to address is that juniper beetle kill. Yeah, opinion, but it's interesting because there's some property line stuff there.
Okay.
And so there's some details there that, probably staff can speak to and kind of help you understand better. But where that fire mitigation and all of that, like that is definitely on their list, and also with kind of some drainage and some ground cover. Mostly I think what they're going to be doing is up near the top and doing planting.
Okay.
Because the trail itself is a little bit in flux. And so that's why you probably won't see a ton. So we may have to work with some property owners to help them manage the fire mitigation on that.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks so much. Any additional council comments this evening? Okay, then I will close that and move on to city manager and city attorney updates.
I think I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just two quick things. One, I wanted to say thank you. Gary is one of those guys that I have worked with since I started in 2000. And so it was pretty cool tonight. So that's great, to see him get to go have some fun, you know, and spend the time on other things for a change. The second one was, I just wanted to say thank you again to staff and my team, Richard, Angelique, Danielle at my firm. A number of the items you saw today, everybody has worked a lot of hours on, and it went really quick tonight. And I think that is reflective of the time you put in and staff put in and our team put in. And so I just wanted to say thank you to all of those people, because sometimes we miss that, especially from my office. We never say thanks for the work. So anyway, with that, if I can just talk for 30 more minutes, I'll be good.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you can't, nor will we. So who would like to identify a place for a social event if there's interest? I'm headed home. I've got a decongestant in my future.
Oh.
Okay. Anybody going out?
No.
Okay, then go ahead and you
Where,
can,
where do you want to go?
You
guys pick.
Oh, for the love.
I'll only give it for one.
Okay.
Are there many choices? Go ahead.
Yeah, it's 7:30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is early. Let's go to the rib.
Okay, great. So
We're gonna convene at
Yep.
the rib.
Okay.
yeah, perfect.
Can I
Um,
say something?
Yeah,
I want to thank Carl, his office. No, seriously, for the help on the agenda on Friday. They helped a lot, and he was very yeah, just very helpful. So thank you guys.
okay, perfect. Then I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Shall we go?
I move to adjourn the April 4th meeting.
A second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Have a great night.
Thank you.